So can we use science to prove that God exists? When scientists are working to develop new theorems, they use something called the scientific method. And it works like this. First, an hypothesis is formed. The hypothesis is a proposal to explain an existence of something or an existing of a process. Then the scientists will do research to understand more about the system that the hypothesis exists within and how things work. Then they will formulate experiments. The experiments test the hypothesis, and depending upon the results of the experiments, the hypothesis will either be validated or invalidated. So, let's start with the hypothesis that God exists. How would we proceed with research? First, we could study the Bible, we could study other documents from the time of Jesus and understand more about the environment in which Jesus existed. Now we can formulate experiments to confirm if Jesus is in fact God. So, experiment number 1, an all-powerful God can alter physical items. So in this case, Jesus, his mother Mary, and his disciples were attending a wedding at Cana in Galilee. The hosts ran out of wine, and this was a very big embarrassment at that time for a big wedding feast to run out of wine. So Mary asked Jesus if he could turn water into wine so that the wedding celebration could continue. And Jesus then had them fill the wine jugs that were empty with water, and he transformed water into wine. So this is an example of Jesus altering physical items. So experiment number 2, an all-powerful God can cure illnesses. Now, Bartimaeus, a blind man, was sitting outside of Jericho when Jesus and his disciples approached. Bartimaeus called out to Jesus. He said, "Son of David, have mercy on me." And Jesus touched Bartimaeus, and he was no longer blind. This is a clear example of Jesus curing an illness. Experiment 3, an all-powerful God can make things appear. So Jesus was near a Passover festival, and there was a very large crowd gathered around. The crowd was hungry, and Jesus felt they needed to feed the crowd. He asked his disciple Philip about feeding the crowd, and Philip answered it would take more than a half year's wages to buy enough bread for each one of these people to have a bite. Then Andrew said, "Here's a boy, and he has 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, but how far will that go among so many people?" Jesus commanded his disciples to distribute the 5 loaves and 2 fish to the crowd, and they were able to continue over and over giving bread and fish to the crowd until everyone had had their fill. This is an example of Jesus making things appear. Experiment 4, defying physical laws. We are all controlled by the laws of nature around us. So if a God could defy such laws, this would be proof. So in this case, Jesus' disciples set off in a boat to row across a lake. And Jesus walked on water to join them. The disciples were amazed by this, but Jesus was able to walk across the water and join them. This is an example of Jesus defying physical law because he should have sunk in the water like any one of us would have. Experiment 5, an all-powerful God can overcome death. Jesus had a friend, his name was Lazarus, and he was informed that Lazarus had died. And he went to Lazarus' home and found, yes, in fact, Lazarus had died and he had been buried in a tomb. And Jesus said, "Lazarus, arise." And Lazarus then came from the tomb alive. This is an example of Jesus overcoming death. So, these 5 experiments which were run almost 2,000 years ago, confirm the hypothesis that God exists and Jesus is God. Thank you.